Hi, welcome. In this video I'm going to go through all the steps that I went through to build a high bar table in this locally sourced chestnut. So the first job is to rough cut the pieces to the sizes that I need. Because this has a live edge on each side, I'm using the track saw there just to cut a relatively flat edge. So I used 6 slabs, about 2 meters long. And here I'm taking that back, so that flat edge that I cut outside is now running up against the fence of the table saw, and I'm just cutting those rough sizes out. There's a fair few cracks in some of these, so I'm trying to maximize the stop that I can use. And so this is me cutting off the other side of the live edge. Here we are at the planer thicknesser. This is where we can get those edges totally flat and parallel to each other. This is now in thicknesser mode, this old 80s machine, which is still working pretty well. I'm bringing everything down to the same thickness, that's 40 millimeters in this case. Some of the wood has a little bit of woodworm in it, so I'm basically using that for the leg structure, but for the tabletop I've selected the best bits that I can find. And here I'm just organizing and planning which piece of wood is going to go where. Making sure that the grain is opposite on each side to avoid warping. And I'm just marking the order that I want to put these together so I can help me on the glue up. And here's a little trick. If you take the 2 sides which are going to be glued together and bring them up like a book, you can run those 2 pieces together through the planer, and this, if there's any discrepancy in your machine, this will cancel out when those 2 pieces are put back together again. So it's a nice little trick, and it's in my experience works extremely well. And in this case we had 5 pieces, 5 slabs making up this tabletop, and as you can see it's a pretty seamless joint. So I'm using the Domino to align for the glue up, and I'm using Titebond III, which is a waterproof, pretty strong glue. It also has a relatively long glue time, so it's pretty easy when you've got maybe 10 minutes of setup here. So as you can see with the Domino, it's pretty easy. It's just pushing those together, nice and easy, no problem. A bit of help from my friend. Okay, so it's bringing that table down into the clamps, and you can see just as we start to apply a bit of pressure, you can see that glue squeeze out is really nice and even. This is the next day coming out of clamps. First job is just to use the chisel to remove the dried glue. Just having a little look just to see where we are as far as flatness is concerned, and it's pretty good. The sander will be able to deal with all of those problems. Right, let's get that cross cut to length. My table saw isn't big enough to cut this size, so I'm using the track saw again. I'm just temporarily gluing this piece of scrap wood onto the end so we don't get any tear out. It's not the sharpest blade on this. Nice and clean. Okay, so down to the task of sanding. I'm starting with 60 grit, going up to 80, 120, and then I'm stopping at 180. We'll be using the OSMO product, and it's sufficient enough to bring that up to 180. I won't bore you, that was at least a couple of hours of that. So on the top I'm putting a slight round over, which is what you're seeing here, and also on the bottom you can see that I've used a 45-degree chamfer just to give it a bit of visual, rather than looking just a really thick piece. Last thing before the finish is just to spray some water and give it a final sand of 180, and that will bring the grain up, and then you can sand that back down again. Important to make sure you've got a nice clean dust-free surface before you start to put the product on. So this is the Polyx-Oil product from OSMO, Satin Clear. I think the ease of use for OSMO is a huge positive. I don't find it an exceptionally strong protection, but a table like this is going to get a little bit battered. It's going to get a few bruises, and the great thing about using OSMO is that if you have areas that need some attention after you've finished it. So areas that have got bruises or the finish has started to wear out, it's very easy to sand and then reapply. So as far as long-term maintenance is concerned, I think Osmo is a great product, and the simple ease of applying it is fantastic. So that's after 2 coats, and it's the satin, so it gives a slight sheen. Onto the legs, cutting all the legs to size. Again, I'm going to use Domino joinery. Here's one of the stretchers there, the apron, sorry. Sanding again, everything down to 180. I don't do the water grain propping on the legs. Don't think that's necessary. Right, so they're all prepped now. It's all the joinery. Again, I'm going to make it easy for myself and use the Domino. It's a fairly expensive bit of kit, but it's just fantastic to use. It just makes things so easy. It's a very accurate machine. Bit of distractions. So here's me marking up for the dominoes for the aprons at the top. And then I didn't film it, but you'll see that those are the 2 sides for the dominoes. Right, so now I'm using the same roundover bit that I used on the top of the table just for all 4 sides of the legs. And then I'm using that also, as you'll see in a minute, for the bottom of the legs. Get that sanded again. Right, so now the big glue up. So we've got the glue, the dominoes, the hammer, all the wood prepared, and of course I've prepped all the clamps. This is probably the most stressful part of the project, and it's important to get prepared. Now this whole process took probably no longer than 10 minutes, but it's always good. Now I didn't film it, but I did a complete dry run with all of these dominoes and set it completely up, so I'm pretty confident this is going to fit together with a bit of glue. Even though it's a gentle hammer with a soft mallet. And again, using the domino, it does make things a lot less stressful. It's literally just popping it together like Lego. So the final clamp, I did actually end up changing this. I realised afterwards that I didn't really get a great clamping force on the parallel side. So you'll see after this, I actually ended up changing these clamps. So the bar sat on the top of the aprons and not at the side. But again, using the glue that we're using here, we've got enough time to make those final adjustments. So here's where the clamp just didn't feel right. It just couldn't sit down well enough. So you can see here now I changed it. So here you can see the glue joints really came together with absolutely no problem at all. There's no gaps whatsoever. So the system I'm using to fix the tabletop to the legs is just wooden fasteners. I'm just creating the holes for those wooden fasteners to fit in using the domino. And here is an offcut of sapele, which I had lying around. So I've just cut an edge out of there on the table saw, and now I'm just cutting those to length. And they will fit. Basically, they will be screwed to the tabletop, and the edge sticking out on the right there will fit into those holes that we bored out with the domino into the legs, into the aprons. Little sand, make sure they're quite tight inside those holes, so I wanted to loosen it up a little bit. Okay, so alignment part, making sure that the legs and the tabletop are perfectly aligned. Just popping those in, making sure they're good, and then hammering in a drill piece just to mark the hole that I need to now pre-drill. Being careful not to go all the way through. And now it's just a matter of screwing the fasteners in, getting the tabletop aligned. And we are finished. There we go. This is going to go into our brewery. Really happy with how it turned out. The joinery was seamless, no gaps, and everything aligned perfectly. So yeah. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this project. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. Take care. Bye.